right, you want to open us up with prayer?
Our Father in heaven, we come to this morning with grateful hearts that you have spared our lives through another night and give us a good night rest and we've dawned a new day. Thank you for this occasion that's brought us together. Thank you, Lord, that you have looked out for us and spared us and give us so many blessings that we can enumerate them all. But we just thank you for our families and for what we are about to tell our experiences and throughout our life. We want to say thank you for bearing with us and leading us in all our undertakings and protecting over us, most of all. Thank you, Lord, for this hour, and we pray that you'll lead and guide and direct us. Your will be done in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, you can start it.
Go ahead.
You can start with what you have.
Well, I don't know what you'd first like to know. You can ask the questions and I'll try to answer.
Okay.
What do you want to know about?
Well, you said you was going to tell us where you was born and raised, and
Well, I was born, I don't know if y'all know the place where William Payne's place or not. I was born there in an old house known as the Gardner House. The house is not there anymore. And on June the 4th, 1916. And we lived there, and then we moved around different places. And I don't know, remember all of them, the dates, but back we lived there for a while. And of course we lived at grandfather's place for several years. You might remember more about it.
I was born in September 2nd, 1921, up what's called a swamp, as between the Catawba Road and Payne Road behind Bill Lucas and home. And I lived there until about 3 years of age, and then we moved to what they call a Cato place up there by our house out about 200 yards south of Catawba Road and Hillgo Mine Road. And we lived there for about 6 years. And I remember moving when we moved there, and we farmed. Our grandfather on Daddy's side, he was mixing fertilizer. Those days we would mix our ingredients in the fertilizer, and he was mixing it, pulling it from one end of the wagon to the other. The teams were not, LJ and Papa was blind, but he was fixing the fertilizer, and so he had a stroke and fell and landed on his shoulder, and he never did gain conscious from that point on. He died. And so those were some things I remember living there. Also, we had one of the tremendous hailstorms that I ever recall. We were over at the backside near where Tobe Lyer lives on that farm, and we were putting out fertilizer around the crops, and the awful cloud come up. Papa said we better get home to the house quickly. So we ran, and we got just there in time. We didn't able to put the wagon on the shed and with the fertilizer on, and also put the mules in the barn with the harness on, and we rushed to the house. And after the cloud, that the house was rafted up, the ground was covered in paddocks about the size of a BB shot. And so we at that time, the chickens and the hogs run at large, and so I had 16, I never forget, had 16 chicks about almost large enough to eat, and all of those were killed by the storm. And so that was part of the members of that. And also I started the school from that point. In 1927, I started school down in Savannah down on Threep Road about 2 miles from where we live now. And I walked that trail there right along my fence to school. And we were going to school there, and there's a large building, LJ was in one upper classes, and it run from about 1 to 6 in 2 large rooms. They had a big partition between, and so that's the way we were started. I started school there, and then on this occasion, to stand out of my mind, we had 2 outside toilets, one for his and hers. And the boys is now no different from now. They just had more to do now than they did then. They kind of drummed it up and decided to take some firewood, pile it up, take a prize pole, and turn the toilet over, which they did. And so the superintendent was over at the grammar school and the high school at Mount Pisgah, and so he come up half court, and he herded everybody in one room. They were just jammed in, and so he called who was supposed to have been or was around there in the other room and drilled them well and found out what part he had to play in that. And I was a witness. I would have been big enough, I would probably hope, but I was just a bystander. And so my buddy, he called his name, and I thought my name would be next. So he took them all in, quizzed them all, and then took a stick and tore the bottom up. And so that was a standout in my mind from that point on. And we moved to we're down to, where you cross from William Payne lives, you remember that?
Mhm.
You want to go from there?
I can see, you can see now that you're not gonna get out of me like you're getting out of him, because I don't remember all that kind of stuff.
That's fine.
But anything that you'd like to know, well, you can ask the question,
Okay.
and I'll try to answer best of my ability.
We moved down there, I say, sometime about 1931. And so that is, I was about, 10 years old. And so we were farming. Papa was working in the mill off and on, and he was, at that time I recall, he was working 12 hours at night. Whether you go over there and stay from 6 to 6. And they had what they call relief people. And they would relieve you 1 hour during that 12 hours and let you rest or have a lunch break or whatever. And he was making $1.69 a night. That's what he was making for 12 hours. And so he was making $9, probably $9 a week. And so that went on until we would farm. Mom was she was a chief, she was a cook, she was a leader, she was a farmer. She did it all, and Papa worked, and we were there, and she took care of us. And we farmed in every little corner in the field. Mama would plant something to eat, whereby we could have plenty of food. We had vegetables, we always had plenty of milk cows, and it was, I don't want to say it was strange, but it was a normal thing back in those days. Neighbors looked out for neighbors. Granddaddy had 500 acres of farmland, wood and all, and so we was 5 families lived on this place. And we would, everybody had 1 or more milk cows, put them in a pasture, and if the neighbors had more than one and didn't need it, they'd loan it out to someone that didn't have a milk cow. Milk was a commodity, it was very important at that time. And so Mama always looked out for us. We had plenty to eat, though the Depression was a bad time. I remember when I was along about that time, Papa gave Mom a $20 bill. I remember it just as well, it was yesterday. And told her to hang on to that, and he was gonna take whoever, I don't remember, there's about 4 of us, to town and buy a winter clothes. And I will forget that. And he took that $20, and then a pair of overalls was about 98 cents. A shirt was 79 cents. A pair of socks was a quarter, or maybe 3 for a quarter. It depends on the style. And so he took that $20, bought us some overall jacket, overalls, long underwear. That was a common thing that the kids had to wear when cold weather started. On May 1st, it's against the law to take them off before May 1st. You could not go barefooted. You couldn't go barefooted at all until May 1st. That was this law. And so things stand out of my mind. And so during that time, I was the neighbor. He had sickness in the family, and he got behind with his flying, and he had 3 boys, and he had what's called a 3-hour crop. But he wanted me to come and ask Papa, could I come and what we call tear down middle of the corn. You just run one furrow through the level it down, and he wanted me to lay by his corn for him. And he had a large crop, and he said it'd take you about 2 days maybe. And Papa said, now if he wants to go, we can go. And he said, I'll pay him. And so I went. And he said, I gave him his dinner, and I ate dinner, and I worked all day. And then the next morning I went and worked the lunch, and we eat. And he said, well, boy, you through. He said, I'm going to pay you. And he said, I'm going to pay you what, at least Sal, that's the Sal farm, that's what they was paying, 25 cents a day for women to hoe, and 35 cents for people to plow. And so I plowed a day and a half for 50 cents. I'll never forget that. And that was my first money I ever made.
Were you pleased with 50 cents?
Oh man, that's something. Then you got to go on to tell you, my granddaddy had a lot of wood on the area, and people had to have stove wood. And so he sold some stove wood. And so in order to make money to go to show, you go to show for a quarter. And I would cut wood. It'd take me a half a day to cut enough wood. You would cut it 4 foot long, bust it, and in halves, and put limbs and all, 4 foot high. And you got 25 cents cut that much wood. And then you take that half a day to go to enjoy the show. That was a red letter day. Of course, you went on Saturday to see the jitterbugs. And you get your popcorn, 2 boxes for a nickel. And so that was about it. And then I dropped out of school when I was about 13. And my uncle, he was flying, but he had to have a job, and so he hired Papa to plow 60 cents a day. And so we made that crop, and he and I went to town. First bale of cotton we went, and we went down, and he said, let's go buy us a pair of shoes. And so I did. I was barefooted, and I went and tried the shoes on barefooted. And I bought a pair of 7.5. I never forget it. He had a 7.5. And I wore them that winter, and spring of the year come, May 1st, I pulled them off, tossed them aside. And I never owned next fall, when I was about 14, I bought a 9.5 shoe. My foot those 2 numbers. I never owned an 8 shoe in my life.
Skipped it.
And so that kind of rocked on, and then when I was come 14, I decided I would tried to go to the mill, LG and Papa working in the mill, and so I went over and Papa told the supervisor that I was gonna come in, and he said, "How old is it? How big is it?" That was the question. And I weighed, I believe, if I remember correctly, about 156 pounds, and about the same height that I am now. And for that time, I was wearing a number 11 shoe, and been wearing 11, then a 12 ever since. But I went to work, and I'd go in and like I said, 2 or 3 days a week and learn. It didn't pay you to learn. So I got where I could kind of catch on to the jobs, and so they felt like I could, I told them a story. I would say I told them 16 when I signed up. And so I went to work as I stated, and it doing a half a job for several months, and I made $7.50 a week for a good long while.
How many hours did you work?
It reduced it, they passed a law, the 8-hour law went into effect. You only worked 8 hours.
5 days a week, 40 hours
No.
for $7.50.
Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I can't go back to all those times that you're talking about, but I remember my first days, my first check I drew when I went to work in the mill was $2.11. I don't remember how much time I spent, because you go in and you learn, you didn't get no pay for learning. But when I remember that first, it was not a check, it was an envelope. It was 2 $1 bills and a dime and a penny, $2.11 for my first one. And then after that, after I got learned, I got to making $4.95 a week. I made $4.95 for a while, and on gradually, little by little, on up to maybe $9 a week for 40 hours.
What'd y'all make in the mill?
Pardon?
What'd y'all make in the mill?
We were weaving, he and I, we wove. We called it, part of it was just regular cloth, broadcloth they call it. And then we had some of it made, it looked like, they call it cheesecloth. The window curtains, they call it lino. That's where we started making our money, made about $15 a week. Recall that we were making about $15 a week. We had an old 31 Chevrolet in about 1937. And we were making, like I said, we were making about 15 a week, and we decided we'd buy some new car. And so we went over to the Ford place. Granddaddy went with us. Grandpa showed Kate took me. And we was talking with Frank Cliver, the owner and franchise dealer. I asked him about a car, and he said it to us. And new Ford car was $683. And so we were going, he was fixing up the paper, and Granddaddy, he was walking around and he saw what was happening. He said, "How you boys gonna pay for this car?" And we told him, "We're gonna pay it on time." That's what old expression, month's payment. He said, "You boys don't ever have nothing paying interest on your money." That's what he called it, interest. And he said, "Now, if you boys, I'll pay for that car and save y'all interest, and y'all can pay me." And so we paid him, I don't know, so much a week until we paid that $683 for the car. And that was, we were making big money then, about $15. Then in 1937 of September the 10th, I recall I got the Social Security started in that month, and I got my card. LG did the same, and we were making $16 then. We got a raise, and it took a penny out of each dollar. That was that was withhold Social Security tax. And I drawed $16.83 per week, and while we were making money then. And so that was 37. Things began to pick up a little bit until about 1940, 41, about the time the war started. And so I let him tell about just before he went in service.
Well, we talk about getting into big money. I remember in 1941, that's the last days I worked. We were making good money. We were working 40 hours, making 50 cents an hour. But I made an unusual big check. I got $22.50 from my last work week that I worked before going in service. I took off a few days of going in. I knew I was going in service, so I thought it'd take me a couple of weeks off. So I went in, and like I said, I draw that $22.50 in my last check. Went in service on January 26th, 42. And of course you want to know when I went in service, I mean where I went to or stuff like that. Well, I went into Fort Jackson, drove my outfit, and went to Camp Wheeler, Georgia. Took the basic training. After basic training, went to Camp Blanding, Florida for maneuvers. After several weeks down there, we come back to Fort Benning, Georgia, for more maneuvers. And we left Fort Benning, went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. And that was, on August the 2nd, we went in, got aboard ship to go overseas. We landed in Scotland on, it was on June, we left here, I left there on, I'll get my dates right.
No problem.
We left in August of 1942, and we landed in Scotland on August 7th of 42. And after 3 months in the England and Scotland, we made the invasion of North Africa on November the 8th, 1942. Of course, after we was there about 8 months. We were in the campaigns there, known as French Morocco, and then the Tunisian campaign, and which took us about 8 months there. But in February of 43, one of my biggest surprises, got captured. And I seen what was going to happen there. They had us up under a bridge, and they were shooting underneath there, killing a lot of them. And I said, I wasn't going to stand for that. I wasn't going to be shot. I was going to be shot and getting away. So I escaped that time. That was in February of 43. Well, 6 months later, they got me in Sicily for good that time. So that was, it lasted 12 days. We made the invasion there on July the 10th. We invaded Sicily, and they got me on the 22nd of July of 43. And held me until, it's actually 21 months. And we was in a camp over near the Polish border, up near the Baltic Sea. And the Russians overrun our camp, took it over. So we was helped by the Russians for for about 10 days. And I escaped from the Russians. I made 2 escapes, one from the Germans and one from the Russians. The fence had been torn down where the tanks had come in and torn the fence down, and the Russians, they were guarding us then. I keep them then. Of course, it was for our protection, and that they was there holding us. But I was going to leave. I wasn't going to be helped. As soon as I found out, I could tell from the sound of the guns, the American guns, you could tell the difference from the American gun than the German. As soon as I found out about where the Americans were, there's 4 of us, we took off, so we went down the road about 2 miles and met trucks coming in to pick us up. So they had one of the happier days when I got across the Elbe River on the American side on about May 1st in 1945. And and of course there were several days there, and flew us into France, and we got aboard ship on June the 4th, 1945, and sailed to the States, which we landed on June 15th, 45. And that's just about it so I got home on June 15th, or 2 days later.
Were you were already married before you?
No.
No, you single?
No, but I tell you, a lot happened to me in June of 1945. I got liberated and got home on June the 15th and got married on June 29th. so I got out of jail and in jail all this
Now, you say you went in the service January of 42?
Yeah.
So the war started in 41 in December.
You know, they had bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 41. And they was being in the process of being drafted at the time, but I was ready to go after they bombed Pearl Harbor.
That's what I was wondering, you said you were making good money at Springs. Had you even given any thought to going into service before the war started?
We was in the process then. I knew they was in the process of drafting us, so I just went ahead and let them draft me. And it wasn't but about 6 weeks after Pearl Harbor when we went in service.
The Geneva Convention, was that already in place before World War II?
I don't think it was.
What?
The Geneva Convention. That wasn't, was it?
That wasn't enacted yet?
No, that went in when they declared war, about the time they declared war. Best of my knowledge, that's about the time.
So I've seen some.
You're not gonna let Ever see this tape, are you? When I said I ain't got out of the building.
Is that why we're going to edit it out?
We'll cut it out of hers. Everybody else has.
We relocated down where the old house burned when I was about 18 years old. And I thought I had a pretty rough job at the band, and then another guy, in fact, his twins, just working there with us from Western. And so we decided we'd go over to Greenwood. They said it was making beaucoup money over there at Greenwood Textile, you know. That was what they call a textile area, Greenwood, Anderson, Greenwood, all up in West Road. So we decided that the 2 guys were going to go up and get us a job, and we went over on Saturday, and the superintendent of the weaving department was at Kershaw, at one time, and we met him, and he used to give us a good song, you know. Boy, we just had a good job over, you know, make good money, and so we decided we'd come back home, and Sunday afternoon we'd go over and get us a place to stay in and get ready to make that good money. So that was a rough Sunday for the whole family, you know. I rebelled, and peer pressure done got to me, you know, and so time began to approach and for me to leave, and yeah, they usually went out to see everybody about, it takes a long time before he went to service, so he didn't go anywhere that afternoon. He just stayed around and waited to see me off, I guess. And in the meantime, he talked to me. He told me, he said, if I was dissatisfied with the job, just quit. And he give me a few dollars to spend along and keep me from going, you know. And Mom and them, they would discourage me to go on, and I just keep on rebelling, you know. But finally, I decided the boys had come to go, and that put the finishing touch on it. They decided they wouldn't go either, so I stayed on and toughed it out, and so I think they'll tell you that all through the years for standing by me and trying to convince me that I was going to make a mistake, you know, by leaving home. And so I appreciate that. And so I went on to work, and then shortly thereafter, we got power. That was the biggest event that ever occurred in our family. We got power. I lived to be in 1941 summer. I was working on second shift, we were, and Papa had the whole house wired so 3 or 4 months early. At that time, it just started in 35, but it was catching on too fast, because it wasn't, you'd have the requirement, you'd have to have 3 houses would participate in the program before they run a line. And so you'd have to put a $10 deposit, that's all. And people making 20 at the most, half a week's work. And so some people rent a house would do it. So Papa started over at 903 and come through this, what's called a South Farm, the Bradley place, and on, and he got it to down as far as Uncle Gus's old house, where he lives now. And he quit working at it at that time, and so we got power. And then shortly after, they took it up and brought it on to the church, and they wound up the church, the school. And I come home after the second shift, and the house was lit up, and that was a pretty sight. That is the most momentum thing as far as material things that happened to us. And so after he had already been notified he's going in service in January, and Pearl Harbor attack. Then me and him was sleeping around the old big room around there, and we didn't usually get up till late Sunday morning, and we got in, and Papa was sitting by the old radio and said, well, boys, we're in war. And that's the first thing I remember about Pearl Harbor and that. And so he went in January 26th, and in July, Bill Vincent and myself, we went to Columbia. He wanted to volunteer, and I was going to try to get in the Marines too. And he passed, and he turned me down being flat-footed. I tried the Navy, and they did the same thing. So we come back, and so I continued on working, and they drafted me October. I had to report for physical and be sworn in on 19th of October of 42, and I had a week to come back home and what they call get your business in order. I didn't have no business. I was ready to go, you know. But they gave me a week, and so I reported on October 26th 7, 1942. I stayed at Fort Jackson, the reception center, 5 days. They moved me from one area around, and so if I moved across maybe half a mile on, and I stayed there. The academy, what they call the academy, was all men of already trained, and we're going to make activated division. And so I was one of the first 5 to go into this outfit. And so we were there, and we started training, and just before Christmas, they give us a weekend pass. I'll never forget this old fella, Yancey Hilton. He never, I don't think he'd ever been out of Lancaster, Kershaw County in his life, you know. And he went in and they drafted him. He must have been about 40 years old, never been married. And he just got next to him being leaving home, you know. He was in outfit with us. We got on the bus and come in Kershaw, and we just rounded the curve there just before below Kershaw Motel, and you could see the water tank, you know. And he kind of leaned over. He's tall anyway, he had a tall body. And he leaned over and looked. Said, "Boy, old Kershaw looked good. That been going 2 weeks." So from that point on, I spent Christmas there, and all until November 1, the following year, 42. But Kathleen and I, we got married in May 7th of 1943, and I was stationed at from May until November 1, and I run maneuvers in Tennessee November 1, and stayed there until was supposed to come back 17th of February to Fort Bragg, but Mama had to have emergency surgery, and I got an emergency leave from the field the last of January. And I had to report back to Fort Bragg, and over there they done moved to Fort Bragg, and we were staying there. And then February 1st, Ralph I was at Fort Bragg, and they notified me Ralph was about to be born, and so to give me a leave. I hurried home as quick as possible, and transportation was, boy, it was rotten. You'd have to hitchhike or whatever, and so it took me 8 hours to get from 129 miles. So Ralph was 8 hours old when I got it. And so I stayed at Fort Bragg. We took training until I come home on the 21st. I come home often. Come on 21st day of May, September of 43, no 44. And I knew that was my last. I'd already had some shipping papers in my pocket. And I come home, and Frank was home on delivery from the Navy. And he and I would walk down toward Mr. Fortenberg's house, and I told him, and I said, this will be my last weekend home, but I said, don't tell nobody else. But that was one of the hardest things, I guess, that ever happened, to leave an 8-month-old baby and a wife and loved ones behind. And on Thursday of that week, 25th, we left Fort Bragg for up at Camp Kilmer in New Jersey. We stayed there from until October, the 1st day of October. And our battalion commander and officer, he volunteered our whole 800 people is what you call mess, that look after the food, do the cooking, and serve the whole 12,000. And so we went aboard ship first day, and then the 6th day of October, we sailed from New York Harbor to France. And I won't never forget the little young Italian boy named Al Scandio. We were cruising right by the Statue of Liberty. It looked like we just reached out and touched it, you know. And that made me start thinking. He looked at me and said, Vinny, that's what he called me. He said, Vinny, said, let's take a good look at her because we may never see her again. And so that started me thinking, you know. And so we hadn't got out of the harbor. I got seasick, and I was seasick for 14 days. I did a vomit, and I'd go down in the what they call a gallery to help what I could, and I'd hit to get on top side and vomit over it. I ate saltine crackers and chewed lemons the whole time I had 14 days. And
Good thing the Navy didn't take you, huh?
and so that was the 18th day of October, about 3 o'clock in the morning, the Lord come in my life. And I never forget that day. But I had an audition for a watch, and he had a little dial, you could see the time, and I remember that well. And we landed in Marseille, France on 14 days later, which was the 20th. And we unloaded all of our equipment. We shipped all of our equipment with us. And we stayed there until November 1. We went on front line. We went up through France and started at St. Bob was the name of the first town that we were November 1. We went combat. And the third day, that was one of the hardest things that, as far as experience. We were new cuts, I guess you call them, to get there. And there was 4 what they call firing batteries. It had 4 guns, cannons, or howitzers, however you want to word it, 105 millimeters. And they take one and take an image circle and go up in what they call a lay-it, or with the instrument. And then when they got that one laid, they would bring the other 11 up. And each firing battery had to consist of about 106 people, and each man had those. All the communication, everything went into that gun system. But we went online and we started advancing, and so we had to pull a gun out and do the same thing. And they pulled that gun out, and they already went and found what they call a location for to put each one of those guns. And they sent a fellow back a Jeep to pick up a couple of miles back of waiting and to bring them up. And it was in the Bolton Mountains. It was hilly. And that truck was loaded with ammunition, full of that gun, and it also had 8 howitzer men versus the sergeant, versus the driver, versus the machine gunner. Machine gunner stood in the seat and had a turret with a 50 caliber machine gun. He could maneuver from left to right, just about the whole circle, and without shooting the back behind. And so that Jeep, he could make better time in that truck with all that load on it. And so we come to the forks of the road. He knew where he was going. He went on and left the truck rather, and they didn't know which one. They took the wrong, and they run right in ambush. And it was, that machine gunner, it was, the Germans, they fought every way they could, they vouch for this. They had a machine gun in a church steeple out the edge of town. And when this gun crew started cruising along right slow inside, they opened up fire and they shot that machine gunner off, and he fell down in the seat. And when he shook it off, he got back up and started shooting again and knocked his machine gun out. But in the meantime, some small fire got him and he collapsed. And they opened up fire and blew that gun crew up. And there was 5 people killed. That was the 3rd day fire combat. That was a terrible blow for newcomers. And so that was one of the worst things that happened to us, I guess. And so we went on through Germany and got back when he was, I was looking for him after the war. I got back when I was at Fort Jackson. I come home regularly, like I said. And I come home one weekend, Mama never got a telegram from the War Department. LJ was missing in action. And I kind of discouraged him, you know. I said, well, Mama, maybe it's just oversight, or maybe he just missing and he'll show up sometime, and all deep down I knew maybe the possibility would. And so I went back to camp. The next week I come home, weekend, and they had received another cablegram, telegram, that he was captured. He's been helped by the German government. So I was reported back, and I'd always, when I come, we had a bulletin board about big as that wall over there. And it put up all was going to happen for that whole week, who was going to do what. And I check that when I go in on leave and see how to dress the following morning. And so I looked and I saw a big poster with my name on it, report to the Commanding General of Post Headquarters, 8 o'clock. And dressed in Class A uniform, that means dress up. And so I went ahead and did that, and I reported, and he invited me in just like we're talking now. And he talked a few minutes. He said, how long have you been in service? And I told him, that, do you have any other members in service? I said, yes. And I said, I do have. I said, Floyd was in, his brother-in-law, and then I said, I got a brother, but his family's been notified he's been captured. He said, that's what I want to talk to you about. He said, don't try to swap in information about somebody may come to you, a spy or someone want to swap information. Just said, we'll try to get your brother released if you tell us about troop movements, how many troops in your unit, on and on like that. And then he said, whatever you don't exchange no information. And so from that point on, after on to the war was over, I inquired through the Red Cross what possibilities of locating LJ, you know. And they said, well, we know he's being held. His whereabouts is unknown now since war is over. And so we was assigned a town to occupy. We went in and made everybody turn in all the guns, brought them out, piled them out the street, and we started road patrol. It was about 3 people on a weapons carrier with a machine gun mounted, and we rode the roads day and night. And get to that town, we met refugees the prisoners of war. Just as far just as far as you could see down the road, on left and right. And we drove right down the 5 miles an hour going along. And I was just like an oscillating fan looking there from left to right, see if I could possibility recognize him, you know. But not knowing that he was on the Russian side and all the Russian was on the American side, prison war. That's the way they did it. And so until I learned later that he was in the States like he stated. And I stayed on until September of 1945, 25th. I left to come back from Marseille, France, and I made my voyage with 1,200 people on one old Liberty ship, and I stayed seasick again for 14 days. I weighed 200 pounds when I left over there, and I got to Fort Bragg, you know, to be separated. I weighed 175. I lost 25 pounds. But I spent 4 Christmas away from home. First one at Fort Jackson, next one in Tennessee on the news, next one in November. Next one is at France, and the next one, thought sure I'll come in and landed on December the 20th. I thought sure I'd get home, and I eat Christmas dinner. And that night we left Hampton Road, Virginia, and come to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And we were just to show you how they did things now, that we were hooked up with a freight train. Had cars in front of us and behind us. One car with about 30 people on it to be separated from Fort Bragg. And they stopped right out in a wooded area and cut us loose and left us sitting way before daylight. And they started getting off. The fellas did seen a light, you know. They started getting off and they left. And there's an officer, he looked at me and he said, "Corporal," said, you're the ranking person that's left." Well, what, 5 of us? Said, "You in charge of all of our records?" Said, "I'm going to." So every one of them left us sitting there, and so they finally come out about our sun with a truck and loaded up us 5 and carried us in our records. And so 3 days later I was discharged on the 29th of December. And after I got separated, the guy sitting out there in a car, they had made it up with fellas working inside as an old money-making thing. And he said, "Now, this fella go carry 5 people to Charlotte. It cost $10 a piece." And wow, I hadn't made, wasn't making about $66 a month. But anyway, I gave him $10, he'd take me to Charlotte. And then I caught a bus to Lancaster. And then I hitchhiked from then on down to Pleasant Hill, and a fellow Jenkins, Ferris Jenkins, who I knew well, worked with him later. And he bought me and carried me down LG and Floyd, and he was over at Floyd. LG's house on about 3rd Street, Real Village. And so I come home, I got home about 12 o'clock at night. And so from that point on, that kind of thing, she lived up in her little house up in the field up there behind by where Sullivan's place is. And we got the little house where we had it. We dedicated the Lord and dedicated what family we had to the Lord, and from then on we've been there 54 years. But I would like to drop back and say, during you're all this generation don't know what it was like to live in through a depression time and hard times. I recall during that time when we were working in the mill, the houses on the mill village was made of about the old hill, they call it, which is on the right side going up 521. They added the new village on the left side later years. But they built houses, about 3 and 4 room houses. And you rented those houses, and you paid 50 cents a room for a house, and 25 cents a room for a bathroom. And then later they added a car shed, a double car shed, and you shared one side of it with your neighbor on the side. And they charged 25 cents, and you didn't make about $15 a week, so it absorbs a good bit of money on rent. And so
That rent was every how often?
it was weekly.
That was 25 cents per room per week.
You take it out of your check, your rent, take that out. And so Grandma Robinson, they decided to move to the country right above where we live. And see, they was living out there, and so cars was very scarce then. This fellow who lived down in Mount Piltry had an A-model car, and he had carried riders to work, you know. And so he had a load already, and when she moved out there, and she didn't have any way of going, and so she stood on the fender of that car, her and another woman on the other side, stuck her head on the inside of the window, the rolled the window down in winter or summer, whatever, and ride 6 miles, stand on a fender, all kinds of weather at work. Now, I mean, I was just one of many people had to go through hardships like that. And so they finally moved back, and she never did leave the mill village no more. And she lived where she was living when we got married over 30 years. And so she finally bought it in later years. But like I said, it was, when in those days you come home from work, I mean from school, you knew what you was going to have to do. You had chores you had to do. You had to go get water up, night water, and you may have to walk the spring 100 yards away, or you may have to walk the well 100 yards away and draw it. You had to get up night wood, you know, what you call it, build a fire in a hole from all park things, or stove wood. You had to try to keep good dry stove wood so you could cook, and so. Like I said, when that was one of the most luxurious things that ever happened to us when we got out. And
Did that come in phases? I mean, did like just lights was first and then later on refrigeration?
yeah, Papa and Uncle Gus and Clark Tree, they went down to that fellow Hort. He run an appliance place, and began to get electric appliances in, you know, and they bought a refrigerator fix, and that was one of the first. And then I think in 1945 he added, while we were after the war, he got added a bathroom.
You remember how much you paid for your first house?
I have.
Yeah.
I built 4 rooms. They told me, Papa and Mr. Fortenberg told me, said, we could probably build you a little 4-room house for about $800 or $1,000. And so Kathleen and I, we had, back during the war, you bought war bonds, you call it. And we had some bonds and a little saving. Kathleen saved, she worked in the mill some, and saved, and so we decided to go ahead and build started in January, and March 14th we got through, and we had, and when we got through, we had $1,308 in the program now.
How about you, LJ?
I'm just trying to think, I don't know exactly, but, the price, I won't give you the price because I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
But I was just thinking about, I better get back to remembering when we were talking about, I got out of jail and got in jail all in the same month. This was not a quickie marriage, we get, just 2 weeks after I got home. This is not what you call a quickie marriage. Because we were dating back in 1941. We was going together then, But I was one of these type of fellows that when I went in service, I wanted to be, I didn't want no wife to be back home, I mean, that was my opinion, Of course, it didn't take long to after we got home till we decided we wanted to get married. And so it's not getting out of jail and into jail, but I guess it's about one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Right. Glad you straightened that up.
Well, I can say amen to that, because that was a difficult time for me to be separated from Kathleen. I come home about, instead of being 8 months, I leave 2.5. And so we established the home, and I think, like I said, we dedicated to the Lord and ever we had family devotion. And I'll never forget, I felt like it was I was not completely surrendered and we were not, I didn't think I was able to tithe. And at that time, we were making $40 a week. That's after I done moved in the house. And she was tearing the top off the old mill and renovate and everything in order to start air conditioning. And it was trash and chips falling down on you, and you're lucky you didn't get hit with something, and falling down on the yarn and breaking it. You couldn't run anything, so they just paid us $1 an hour, $40 a week to run what we could. And so Rick and I decided to start tithing then. And we've never, tithing. We started off with $4 a week. And so we, like I said, we never failed. We, when I retired, I was able to give 9 times the amount to that bit when I started. And now we have Lord has blessed us, we give 23% more than we did when we started. Now I don't say try to commercialize the Lord. Say I'm gonna give you this, you give me that. Just open up and let the Lord have your will and way with your life, and everything fall in place. And the Lord has blessed us graciously in our church life and family. And we're just grateful for additions to our children, 5 great-grands, 1 to go. And so we're just thankful to the Lord for that.
Maybe y'all would like to ask some questions.
You want to go to your question sheet here?
It might be dinner time here after a while,
We'll feed you.
We'll answer them the best, that we can.
When you were discharged, what rank did you hold?
Staff sergeant.
Your staff sergeant and grandpa?
I was discharged at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
What was your rank?
Corporal.
Corporal?
I was a scout. There's different names for it, depending on different outfits. And that's all that would call for as corporal. I was the only person in that. I was a liaison. I had to report to the battalion. That was a headquarters. It was 5 of us, and we waited to relay orders if we couldn't send it on radio or telephone. We confidentially, as to see, it was routine, confidential, secret, and top secret. That's the way it was categorized. And we had to deliver that to our superior. And it might be maybe a mile, maybe 5 miles you'd have to travel. You'd have to, from December 1 until March, and we had sleet, snow. I didn't see the ground from that time until it started melting in March. And that's when we dug in and cut down trees that's 6 and 8 inches diameter, lay them over a hole and pile dirt on them, and leave a place where you could see out. And that's what we stayed in, slept in at nighttime. And I had to carry, one of us, 5, had to carry what they call a strength report to the higher ups. Like killed in action, wounded in action, hospitalized for any reason at all, and that way they'd know how many people we had, and then they'd have to get some replacements, replace us. And we had to carry that report every day, and zero weather with a Jeep, with top, no top on it, windshield lay down. And today, this left side is, you see that scaly, it's deteriorated on account of ice and cold exposure. That's what the neurologist told me that was causing all. And I'm having numbness in the whole left side because I was driving that Jeep, and that's where the wind is right like it wasn't exposed to. But I drove a minimum time on my eyelashes, the ice in them, to keep battling. But good Lord with me.
You said you found the Lord en route.
Yeah.
And this after you went into service, right?
I was en route, yeah.
I'm just curious as to when LJ felt the Lord tugging on his heart and dealing with you. Was that before you went into service, or?
Yeah, I went before I went in service.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did back before I went in service. I accepted the car.
That kept me going, and I know that what kept him going. Because I didn't have any thought in mind that I never would come back. I just felt like I was assured, though I had some close calls. But I know he could share with you about he did a little New Testament. You want to tell him about that? A little New Testament you had.
Oh yeah. Over in England, they passed out New Testaments. The Gideon, they still give them out. But I don't know, of course, the Gideons, I don't know if they gave them out, but it was the Gideon Testament. And I got one of those in England. In fact, I had one, a bigger one in my duffel bag, but I couldn't, it was too big to carry, but I had this small one, I carried it in my pocket. Well, I had it in my pocket when I was captured, but they took everything off of me, but they missed the testament. They didn't find it until I got in the camp, and when I got in the camp in Germany, well, they took it and kept it about 2 weeks, and they brought it back, gave it back to me, and so I still got it.
And also, you become a Gideon and you started giving out.
Well, yeah, in later years, I joined the Gideons, and I gave, in fact, at Mount Pleasant School, Flat Creek School, Kershaw School, and I got a bunch of letters, notes from the teacher in '96. I don't know who the teacher was, but from the kids, about they appreciate giving the testaments out.
I remember getting one when I was little from you.
Oh, yeah.
Remember you coming to school and giving them
You
out?
remember?
Yeah, I remember getting them from you.
And
So Miss
I
Lucas.
appreciate the notes that I got back from them. The teacher sent them all in one big envelope, and I still got it.
The POW camps, was that hostile day in, day out, or did it vary?
Well, there was a difference, and I'm just thankful if I had to be one, I had rather been a German prisoner than a Japanese, because I've talked to Japanese prisoners of war, and you talk about rough. Now, that was one of the rough camps. There was 17,000 Americans died in the Japanese prisoner of war camp. And of course, about 3% died in the German. It was rough. I mean, the biggest problem I had was what you got to eat. I got 1 cup of soup. Barley rather. It was the parts of barley made what we call a brew out of, what we would call coffee. Of course, you could bring it in the tubs. You could see the bottom of the tub. It was so weak, but it was warm. It was hot to drink. That's what we got in the morning. At noon, we got a thin cup of soup. And then in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, we got 1 slice of bread. And that was our ration for the day. Now, that was in the camp. Now, after a while there, went in, got in there in this camp about August. And September, along there, they started going to get details to go out into the farms. And so anybody that didn't have proof of your rank, anything a corporal above, didn't have to work. But I had no proof at all of my rank and so they said, you're going out to work. But that's about as good a thing as ever happened to me, because when you get out on the farm, they raise wheat, potatoes, beets, things like that. When you're out working in that farm, you could always bring that stuff in your pockets, at night. And you could cook it on the little stove. We got a ration of coal, so many blocks of coal, that's all we got. When you use that up, you use it without. But we use that to cook potatoes with, cook that wheat. And so that's what kept it going, the stuff that we swiped off of. But on this, out on this farm, they'd always bring in a car, a side car out there on the track. Seemed like they every Saturday, they have to bring one in, and for us to load on Sunday. You know, we got tired of that. And one Sunday we bought, we wasn't gonna load it. But we just about got to the end of the road because they sent for the firing squad. There's about half a dozen Germans, and they had their machine gun, and they got us out, lined us up against the fence, you know. That old German go up and down, you know, man, he was just foaming at the mouth, telling us, you know, about you ain't do this and do that. So after a while, they said, in fact, we done decided we were going out and work after that. They said, you go out and load that one car, says that's all you'll have to do today. So we decided we'd go live. We were glad to go get have the opportunity to go to load that car. So we had quite of experiences out there. We talking about the hard times. Now they were living hard too. They had no way of refrigeration. We cut ice on the lake in the wintertime. They had a bunker. They had a whole dugout in the ground, and then had it covered over with dirt, and that was a place they kept for the refrigeration. We cut that ice on the lake in the wintertime and put it in that bunker. That was the refrigeration for the summer, you know. And they put whatever little stuff that they need refrigeration in there on that ice. Of course, we cut wood, we dug potatoes, we dug sugar beets, we thrashed wheat, and that's the kind of work we did. But being out on this farm, I guess, was a whole lot better than being in one of those camps because you got very little to eat in those camps. It's like I said, 1 cup of soup, and that drink in the morning, and a cup and a slice of bread, and that was it. But they give you a little more to eat out on the farm too. But after a while, though, it took me about a year back and forth. I finally got my rank back then. Well, they got it, you know, through a representative, and they would say, well, but they didn't let me have it until several months after they received it. And they come in one day and said, well, you can go in now. Says, and showed me, and I still got it at the house, you know, when I got back, you know. They said you can go in now, but that was on 1st of '43, and so it wasn't long till the war was over. I remember in that camp, you know, Roosevelt died. Didn't he die April 12th, or what was it? It was 45. There was a German guard walking around the fence, and he took pride in telling me that your president had died. He said, we'll win this war now. That the president is dead. It'll be the end of you. So that was in April. And then May 1st, I was over I got out of there. Over on the American side of the Elbe River. So he didn't know what he was talking about.
Did you seem like come over along the way you mentioned about y'all eat some horse meat, some
What?
horse meat, y'all remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they didn't have no meat, you know. There was a lot of horses got killed, you know, and they put, that's the one that put horse meat in the soup. I said, yeah, put it in there. So we were glad to get horse meat or anything else.
I remember see when it was a long time there, the British and the Americans had a time sending their bombers up. The Germans had a lot of aircraft, and they kept it was way on it after, late in the war, before the England and the United States knocked out the Air Force, and they had air superiority, Americans and the British did. And so they got up there, and every time they'd see a convoy, they'd drop bombs on it or strafe it with aircraft. And they finally, you'd go, we would move up. What I'm saying, would advance. You might see a bunch of cars, trucks, and guns half a mile long, where they strafed and set them on fire and exploded. And so they finally got weak with that, and they started towing everything by horses. Or even guns, it towed their guns by horses. And to see them horses up, they'd go down in the airplane and strafe them, and they'd kill them. That's where they'd get their meat on the highway. They'd kill them horses, just anybody else. Because the Germans as well, they was running short of food too. And so...
Was it during the war that you became so acquainted with Spam?
Yeah, yeah. They started serving us Spam. They tried to camouflage it every way they could, but it wound up being Spam.
Hadn't touched it since, have you?
I don't care a thing about it no more. I don't care a thing about it, and you know, a lot of people these sub sandwiches. That reminds me of it. I don't eat it. I don't care for a sub sandwich. Kathleen all the time said, "Oh, they got less calories." Da da da. I said, "Yeah, they got less from me to eat too. I just don't care for it." Once you eat that, so.
And talk about some of the combat experiences. My first experience with anybody getting killed was the second day in combat. That was in French Morocco. I come commander. We was advancing, and I was in some thick bushes, and I was running, and I happened to look down, and there was some company commander. He had been killed, you know, and I had to jump over him, and that was my first experience on site.
That was your company commander?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because we lost so many from there on out till we got the day that I was captured, my squad. I didn't remember, I can't remember a person's name because there's so many. Bring them in minute replacements until you would learn their names. And so we lost a lot of them.
It wasn't as bad, I mean, to have replacements, as we lost a lot of people. But see, we had wire crews. They would string the wire along on the ground, side of the road, and tie it to a tree, just loop it. And they use that for telephone lines. And they didn't use radio much because some of our radio and codes, they have a code, you know, I have it in past, and they would not use radio anymore, and that's where my work would come in. I'd have to take the message by car, Jeep, and I had 5 gallons of gasoline stacked on the back of it. My order was to, if I couldn't eat it, set fire to it, Jeep and all, burn it up, pour gas on it, burn it. I'd raise up, I had a folder, a satchel, like a canvas bag, to put all that in and zipper it. I'd raise up the seat of the Jeep, put it underneath there, and I'd have it out where I could grab it if I was captured or looked like I was going to be captured. And also carry matches or lighter, and to light the gasoline with. And so we, like I said, these people go out on this road, they got, a lot of those got killed. The radio operators which was with them, calling back for us for artillery support. And a lot of those got killed. But in the infantry, they was quite frequent get killed, captured, or wounded, whatever. And like he said, the replacement come in so fast, you couldn't learn everybody who was what. But everything went along kind of stable after we got home from service, and that run through our minds. And while we were working, I'm sure he can vouch for that. While you're working or occupied or doing something, you don't, that thing don't go through your mind. If you be idle, all those things that come back to you. And I was going to get along pretty good. And Becky's husband, Odell, got killed in Korea back in '51. And so he, that was this renewed thing. And so the same thing now, you got two things to think about now, where you just have one. And I tried to keep myself going, talking to somebody, or doing something about it, keep that dwell on. I can't even think about what he might have gone through. But I do want to add this, and he referred to, told me this, I forgot. They go to these PW conventions, and they talk to each other, and that's the hope of to a certain extent. But one guy told him that he was a Japanese captain, two of them, that's going down the line, checking the personal items. They come across a fellow, he had a little Japanese mirror in his possession. And they took some kind of a knife and they whacked his head off, said his head fell off at his feet, and said he started searching his mind and body, trying to figure out if he had anything that belonged to Japanese.
You was talking about the Japanese POW camps, and so on the History Channel, that Bataan Death March, I think they called it. That was so inhumane how those soldiers were treated.
Yeah, they were
awful.
They would put them on those marks, and especially that one. The person would drop out. The fellow said he would look back and hear a shot, and nobody. They shot him.
55 miles, I think is what they said that was, and they should have done it in a day, maybe a day and a half. And they stretched it out for like, what was it, 7 or 10 days. Wouldn't let them have any water. And so there was artesian wells all along the roadside, wouldn't let them stop for water. And in this kind of weather, hot, humid, and just awful.
But he said he would, you could do without food, but you couldn't do without water. He stated that.
That's true.
He said he's always conservative with his water.
That's something you gotta have is water. I mean, you can go without food better than you can water.
One of the POWs they were interviewing on that show, was it the Philippines where they were being marched through?
I think it was.
Said that, some of the natives, Filipinos there would be by the roadside and try to sneak and give them water or food, something, as they'd go by, and said there was a couple standing there holding a baby. Just how ruthless those Japanese were. Just walked by the baby, stuck that rifle right there and blew his head off.
Because they wanted to help.
But because they were trying to give those guys water.
There's an old fella, he lived up there at Indian Land. He made it, and he lived by himself all the time. And still did, to come back out of the war. And somebody went in and killed him, robbed him and killed him, and they found out who he was. They said it was inside, and then they finally located the killer. But they said that fella, it rolled on, he'd already killed local paper write-up what he went through, you know, and said after all of that, he had come home, try to make a life for himself, somebody just deliberately killed him. Any other question or?
Well, I know you've discussed it with us some, but just to have it on the tape, I'm still amazed with the years of service that y'all had with Springs as a family. You know, if you have that, just to have it on the tape.
Well, best I could recall, I figured it out. My papa, LJ, myself, Eva, Art, and Frank. I know that many. But there's others, Ariel, he worked in there, David worked short span, Ralph did also. But our immediate family, those first mentioned, 365 years, Springs.
Can you imagine?
Even Mark had some. But that's a bit, I tell you one thing, Dan, I tell you too, that was the best education he ever got. He worked there this summer with the
That's the most amazing part is the three of you. You know, you and LJ and Frank, 127 years just between the three of y'all. That's mind-boggling.
yeah. So,
But Mark, you noticed the question here Kevin had written down. What did you do the first time you saw your wife and family? Well, of course, you got married when you came home.
I remember the person that met me at the bus station when I got home. I don't know how he found out, but he was there, Story Roberts. And he brought me out to, in fact, it's right there at Ralph's, the old house, that's where we were living. And you know, of course, you don't remember it, do you?
Yes.
Before it was burned?
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
Okay. That's where, I remember, we drove up around the yard, and Kathleen had grown so much in those 3 years. See, I've gone over three years, and she had grown up, so you're gone. And it's, I said, who are all these people, you know? And they said, later they told me, said, he's lost his mind, you know, but I did right.
I come home, like I said, it was about midnight, and Kathleen was down at the old house, just her and Ralph was down there. And they all got up, you know, LG now, I went to where he was at, and they took me out there, and so on Sunday, all of them come home to the old house and had lunch together. Harriet, Floyd, and LG, and me, and May, and we were there. And I'm not so sure where George was out then or not, but we did get together on that, and it was. And,
George Gardner? You talking about Uncle George Gardner?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
in service also. He was in the Marine Corps. So Ralph just couldn't hardly accept me coming. He was I felt like I took his place, you know. And it was hard for him to, as a kid, to accept me, you know. And I would, he'd do something, and I'd correct him, you know, a long time after. And he'd tell me he wanted me to go back to the Army. That's just a kid like, you know. And so he slept with Kathleen during his, I guess, while I was gone. And when I come home, he used to figure out why he couldn't sleep with him, you know. And Kathleen put him in the crib right side of the bed, and he'd have to pull that crib over and hold his hand, he went to sleep.
Mm.
He said he wanted that to feel something like, you know. But that's natural for kids, you know. I was growed up for two years there, and I wasn't around, and then I come in on the scene, and he felt like I took his place, you know. But that's natural.
Well, we just wanted to do this because generations are different, you know. Most everybody in your generation went into service, one branch or the other served, you know, and it just seems like there's fewer and fewer people that are doing that now. I mean, as long as I've known the two of y'all, y'all have been pillars of our family, pillars of the church and the community. And it's a lifetime accumulation of what you've been through, I think, that got you to where you're at. And I just wanted to get it firsthand so we could share it.
I got some of the things I share with you, I won't take it. Some of our coming up as kids, you know. Kids are no different
They might be-
now than they were then, when we were coming up. The only difference, they got be exposed to more. Now, there was no such thing as when we was coming up, sit down at the table and ask, I don't want to add what we got. We knew what was on the table, we were glad to get, we ate it and appreciated it. And we didn't ask how, we just wondered deep down, I guess, if it's gonna be enough for it to go around for all of us. And other things that, say mischief, things that, like I said, I don't think you do to tape it.
You know, one of the questions over here is America done better or worse since World War II? Financially, yes, but spiritually, no, in my opinion. I was happening to run into Roberts this morning on my walk, and I said, Robert, you got, how many more days you got? And he said, 5. You're gonna be happy to get out. And you know, there was a teacher got shot down in Florida yesterday from one of the pupils. And he said that, we're talking about graduation, he said, pupils asking what to wear for graduation. He said, wear what you wear to church. And we don't go to church. So that's what's wrong today. People is not being brought up in the right way. And that's why so much of this going on in school. I got a magazine here, American Legion magazine, and I just reading is the question: what violent crime is down, but juvenile offenders will continue to be worse. And this sheriff in Arizona, he said he was convinced that people would start, you know, raising the children in the right way, that we wouldn't have all these problems, that crime would go down.
He implemented the old chain gang back in his state.
Who did?
This
This
sheriff
article?
was talking about, yeah. And he said it, get to how many bad hours they put in and work and it policing up areas, repairing this, that, and other. I can recall we talk about, for instance, people can put first things first, such as material things, and try to get ahead. But LJ and I, we can both know it's happening. Like I talk about these big farmers, they were looking out for number one. They wasn't looking out for the people, paying them that little amount, And then when farming gathered crops, and then there was some winter months from, let's say, December to March, before work started back, those people suffered because they had no income. And these two big farmers whom I know, they were classified, I guess, in our day as a millionaire. And both of these people, I guess, died without anything at all. They lost it all for them. I remember one had several hundred acres, had 9 houses, and it had tenants in it, people like that. And and he died, and he didn't own just a few foot of land, and it was on the mortgage when he died. He done lost it all. And he wasn't an old man when he died. So, if it's like Scripture, what if we gain the whole world? We can leave it behind. We talk about springs. Look what his company is going on to be. But it didn't even stop when he died. So the old man died and his son died. And it did stop momentarily for a few minutes when President Roosevelt died during the war, but they started back up. But it's just law of the land that we can try to make it all and lose it all. I know we got necessities, it's different than that, but we've got to have something to live on. But I think at the same token, we got to realize the Creator has long for the creation He gives us to enjoy.
That's about it.
I think that's about it.
I would like to say this, and this is maybe of interest. When Grandma died, Grandma Cato died in 1948 in February. They said she had 125 great-grandchildren and 75 grandchildren. And as of today, I don't know about the great-grandchildren, but as of today, she's still got 41 grandchildren living. They run anywhere from 60 years old until 90. One of them died here last year, 94.
And the good part about it, there's 10 of them in our family.
Yeah, 10 in our family, 9 in Uncle Gus's family. That's 19 out of the 41.
Yes.
And you talk about the luxuries now of today. You talk about the schools, you want 5 square feet per student. Now you think about in our living quarters when we were all home, we didn't have much over 2 foot. There was 11 of us, and some of us was all at home at the same time.
And learned a plenty in 2 square feet.
When LD went in service, he took, and then he got married, and then it was the rest remained until I got married, and so of course they all went in service. So Vincent, Ariel went in, Frank went in, and that reminded me to Frank. I didn't tell Kathleen, I just shared that with you before. I walked down and I told Frank to not tell nobody. And he was on liberty, and so that was difficult times, but just thank the Lord as well as it was. And I don't know if any more I could add. If y'all have any questions that you might, we'll be glad to. So I'd like to say this, I appreciate y'all, as LJ's already stated, that y'all did show interest. I'm glad that you passed this on. Some of it will be early experiences. It bothered me a great deal. I'll share this with y'all. One of the fellows said he was substitute in his high school. And he asked a question during the Memorial Day. And he asked a group of young people in school, did they know what December 7, 1941 represented? And there's a pause, but after a while, one of the fellows back at the back said that the United States was at war with the Philippines or something, but that was all they could give.
One feeble attempt to even guess, huh?
50 years has left since, plus years since we come back. And just a lot has happened, a lot of people. And now the average age for World War II is about 78. A lot of us are older than that. And they dying for what? Per day?
1,000 a day.
And they're getting out fast.
I appreciate y'all doing this with us and for us.
I don't know if we've made much sense.
No, you did. I've enjoyed it and glad it fell on Memorial Day weekend.
I appreciate that you being interested enough to inquire about it.
Well, I know this is gonna last beyond y'all and probably beyond us too, because I plan on using this in my classes, parts of it, to show my kids what it was like. So, y'all make a difference in the lives of kids you probably not even born yet.
Now, if this
That's
praise the
deep,
Lord,
Kevin.
is anything that can be accomplished from it, because that is the purpose of wanting to do it. Let people know that, as LJ said, the material things, we rich, but spiritual, I think, we're bankrupt to the country. Papers. Like I said, neighbors are thanks to neighbors when we was coming along. If you had a hog and killed a hog, your neighbor, you took him some ham, sausage, tenderloin, spare ribs, take him over something. He did the same thing. And if you had a good crop of something, you didn't have it, you shared with him. And I've known how much shared it on the table already. Like I said, if we had 2 or 3 milk cows and we didn't need the milk, we could loan it out to you, let your family. I've heard this story. They had a pet cow, and she was a good milker, and she died. The whole family cried just like it was a member of the family, because that was part of the livelihood. This is, I've intended to project this. When I was about 9 years old, And Pop was working in the mill, and he hired people to carry his cot to the chin. Now, all the other kids had got to go with their daddy to the chin. And I didn't get to go. And I thought I was stepped out, it's his kid. So Uncle Ben heard me say that, and he said, well, I'm going tomorrow to the gym. Says, William's going to go way back to his oldest boy. And said, if you be up at 4 o'clock, we'll go. And so we were living down there across from where William Payne lives, and there's a little house by Bruce Wallace's. And then Uncle Ben's up by where the old home place is now. And I was so excited going to get to go to the gym. I went to bed real early. And it was cold and moonlight night. We had an old 8-day clock, we had to wind it. It didn't go dead after 8 days. And we forgot to wind it. The clock stopped sometime after I went to bed. So I woke up, I looked out, the moon shining, beautiful night out, cold. I told Mama to get up. She got up, cooked me some breakfast. And I hurried on up, and I got to Uncle lived at a house where I talk about next to Bruce's. The old houses then had cracks in it. If any light, you could see it at night. And I could see the light in that house as far as, I said, oh my goodness, I'm late, sure as well. And he had come out on the porch to get some wood to put on the fire. And I told him, I said, what time is it? He said, oh, it's late. And he went and put that wood on the fire and come back out to get some more, and he said, it's 11 o'clock. I done got one wood, 11 o'clock, and I wouldn't take no chances being late. I went on up there and pushed Junior, Winnie over and got to bed with him. Now that was a standout in my mind. That's just like a kid going to Six Flags or Disney World, going to the gym. And I just got a kick out of that, I guess. Going to see that process of that cot going through a gym and riding there and back. And so time changes, but kids don't know how when they well off. Just like the Russians, they couldn't comprehend it, still can't. Asked one of our ambassadors, I read an article about the economy over here, and he said, well, just to kind of give you some idea, every house in the United States averages about 2.5 cars per home. And over there, about over 10 families got a car.
You ready for lunch, LJ?
Everybody?
You ready for lunch?
Just about.
Just about.
Just about. Well, appreciate you boys taking time out with us.
I'll take these sheets back.
And that's just,
I jotted
hope
some stuff on
something
there
good can
that
come out of it.
nobody else can read.
I appreciate you coming out doing this, but we enjoyed it. We get these out of your way so you can stand up and stretch.